Welcome everyone to today's webinar, industry webinar on retail and FMCG. It's going to be a really exciting one. We've got some great panelists here from Endeavour Drinks, the National Associated Retail Traders of Australia, Accenture and U&U. And we're going to be discussing data science, predictive analytics and AI and their role in the dynamic and changing retail and FMCG industry. So let me welcome our panelists today. I'll be the MC for the session. My name's Andrew Campbell. I'm the Executive Director at Institute of Data. We have with us Miguel, the Chief Data Officer at NARTA. We have Fabio Previdelli, Head of Data and Analytics for Products ANZ at Accenture. Liang, Data Science Lead for Endeavour Drinks Group. Justin Hunting, Partner of Technology and Business Change at U&U, and Madeleine Rose McClulloch from the Institute of Data as well. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for being with us. All right, so I'd like to, at this point, open it up. What I want to say is, for everyone in the audience, if you'd like to ask questions, you can do so using the chat and the Q&A function. There's some great questions that we're going to go through as a panel, but I would like to open it up so that you can ask questions whenever you want, and we will either triage them one at a time and get through them as a panel, or potentially, if we run out of time, panelists can reply to you individually via the Zoom chat feature. And that way you can ask anything you want about the industry, about AI, and your questions answered. So in order to give you a little bit more background about each of us, I'll start with myself. My background is I'm a technology entrepreneur, I suppose. I've built a few different tech products and businesses over the years, and mentored founders of other startups and other technology businesses as well. Probably relevant to today, during 2 years of my career, I was the program director for a venture capital and corporate accelerator business, and helped to build corporate accelerator programs, notably for Liang. So in the FMCG space, I built a innovation and transformation program for the Liang group a few years ago. And during this whole career I've had in tech and entrepreneurship, I've really seen the importance of data, just how much data has changed everything. Every business is a data business now. Customers' data is more important than ever. Data is a whole new asset class, in my view, that needs to be protected and utilized for competitive advantage. So that's my story. But we're really lucky to have Miguel today, the Chief Data Officer at NARTA. NARTA is a really interesting organisation, and Miguel comes from Portugal, having worked in data science in Europe for 13 years before moving to Australia 8 years ago. Previously worked at companies like Autotex and Serata, and as mentioned, NARTA, now as a data scientist and consultant for an IBM partner in Australia, helping large companies build data strategy and get started on their journey in data science and analytics. So, Miguel, tell us what it's like working at NARTA and in the retail industry.
So NARTA is 60 years old, so it's an association, it's a not-for-profit, and it evolved from an association to basically a buying group. So if you consider appliances retail in Australia, you'll have basically 3 big groups, which each will probably have around a third of the market. So you got Harvey Norman, you got the Good Guys, and you have all the others. And all the others together are basically under this buying group called NARTA. So that includes JB, JBI-Fi, Winnings, being the lead. So most if not all of the popular brands outside of Harvey Norman and the good guys are part of NARTA. So this is a small group of people. I believe we are 30 at this point, but we move almost $4 billion every year in purchases. And the business model for NARTA is we get the rebates, and then we basically give that money back to the retailers. So NARTA in itself is very political. It's basically between those retailers and Samsung, LG, Bosch, all the major brands, who instead of having to negotiate with individual retailers, basically do it through NARTA. So in our board, we have Lionel Lee and other very rich retailers in Australia. So a lot of them are families. I think you guys are probably aware. So they all sit in the board, and then the CEO of Samsung comes in and the CEO of LG comes in. So it's a bit like the UN for retail. And it's been very interesting because although it's a very traditional environment, NARTA to remain relevant, especially when Amazon moved to Australia, that was the big threat and forced us to change very drastically and very quickly. And it was strategic for us because we're in the center of all these players to use data and to bring benefits by using that data and share it back to the different stakeholders. So obviously the retailers are competing with each other. So although they buy together, they do compete with each other. So as I think you may be aware, we do not touch anything that is related to prices. So what we'll say is, okay, we negotiate a 10% discount for all the members, but the actual price to the consumer, well, they're as aggressive as I think you know as consumers. But yeah, so being able to sit and collect everyone's data, because basically we have everyone's trust, we saw that this would create a unique opportunity, not only for NARTA, but actually for retail in Australia, which is to cooperate where you usually would be competing. And when we launched the idea, we said, you know what, there's other businesses out there who take the retailer data and make business out of it and basically resell it. Why don't we do it? And by doing it from a retailer perspective, we know how far we can go in what we disclose and what benefits that can bring. Because the challenge is when we disclose too much about a retailer, I'm sure the other ones will be very happy, but when it comes to their turn, they're going to say no. So finding the limit of what is useful and comfortable has been the major challenge for us. I think we've overcome that challenge. And so basically now we are providing, so we have a platform called Market View, which has 70% of the retail data for appliances in Australia, because NARTA managed as a very old association, very trusted by everyone in the industry, managed to actually get the good guys to cooperate with the group. So now we actually have, except for Harvey Norman, we pretty much have everyone else. And this gives us, and the suppliers, Bosch, LG, and so on, it gives them a very good view of how the products are moving through the channel, where there are stock issues, how campaigns return in terms of their marketing spending and so on. So although we didn't plan to do this as an Amazon for bricks and mortars, it's kind of what we turned into. So we have all this data from everyone because the suppliers share their data and the retailers share their data. We're the only ones who see it. And then we share back to each of them to the point that all of them agree. And in that sense, as far as I know, we are pretty unique.
Yeah, that's a really unusual model, but you guys would have some amazing data. So yeah, Miguel, thanks a lot for joining us today. Also with us today, we've got Fabio Previdelli from Accenture. Fabio is a senior executive and consulting practitioner with 15 years in data-driven consulting. supporting the FMCG industry and retailers. And in the past 10 years has covered multiple roles in Accenture, getting involved in numerous global transformation programs and picking up experience managing complex programs in multi-location, multi-language and multicultural environments in over 20 countries. So yeah, Fabio currently runs the FMCG and retail industry for applied intelligence in Australia and New Zealand at Accenture. Welcome, Fabio. What's a day in the life of Fabio at Accenture like?
It's a very busy one. Hi everyone and good afternoon. No, it's so every day there are calls with clients, especially FMCG clients that are struggling to find the best use of the data that they have and how to drive a sustainable, profitable growth. And everybody's struggling with this, and it's exciting because the market is very demanding. There is a lot of competition, and there are a lot of ways in which CPG company and retailers can use this data to actually provide a benefit for themselves, but also for the consumers, which is you and I. So it's full of challenge, but very, very interesting.
Brilliant. I wonder if you could get European retailers to unite in the same way that that NARTA has managed to get Australian retailers to unite.
Yeah, it would be very nice, but I think there is a very long road to get there.
Cool. Welcome again. Thanks, Fabio.
Thank you.
And yes, we have Liang from Endeavour Drinks Group. Is a former McKinsey consultant, working there for 4 years, running advanced analytics projects in Australia, Japan, China, and the US, publishing more than 10 scientific papers in renowned international journals, and having picked up 4 US patents along the way as well. And now with more than 8 years experience in data science and software engineering, G is the data science lead at Endeavour Drinks Group, which is a huge group, and where she's built up an entire data science team from scratch. That's remarkable. G, welcome to the panel. What was it like building an entire data science team?
It is very, very exciting. I only joined Endeavour for 4 months. The very reason that I joined Endeavour is I actually get the chance and opportunity to build the team from scratch. That has been quite a journey and exciting. I think there are 2 things that make it happen. One is Endeavour really have tons of data that is underutilized. Another one is the data science, and AI is one of the highest strategy companies currently have, probably similar to other industry and companies as well. So that's very attractive, and we have been using a lot of data science in various use cases. So that's where I'm trying to focus on in Endeavour. Before that, I worked at McKinsey as a consultant. Try to establish advanced analytics COE. I think that just gave me experience how I can build a data science team from scratch. And also different industry, marketing, education, public transportation, public sector, banking in different countries. So having worked in different country, different culture, and different business cases, it made me very confident that for any company, data-driven will become more and more of the opportunity to differentiate themselves from the competitors. The further away they are in terms of advancement of the data, the more advantage they have compared to their competitors.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I couldn't agree more with you. That's yeah, that's absolutely why we started the Institute of Data in the first place. The advantage that having insight into data gives you is remarkable, and it's essential to survival. So yeah, thanks again, G, for joining us. And now, last but certainly not least, Justin Hunting from UNU, who has really helped significantly in pulling this panel together today. So thanks, Justin. Justin's the partner for the for UNU's recruitment business in the data science space, with global experience in the UK, Hong Kong, and Asia. in emerging technology and digital transformation recruitment. It continues to deliver mid to senior level searches for clients in this space. So if you're looking for a good recruiter in the sector, Justin's your guy. Loves talking about data solutions with clients, candidates, and anyone really. Welcome to the panel, Justin.
Thanks, Andrew.
What are you seeing at the moment in the recruitment sector in data science? Is it just as hot as ever? What's the latest trend?
Good question. Yes, it's definitely busy at the moment. I think last year there were obviously some quiet moments earlier on in the year with COVID, but this year it seems to be incredibly busy. A real blend of sort of data engineering and data science. I think a lot of people are probably still building up their data platforms, transitioning over to the cloud. So there's a lot of integration work going on. But off the back of that, some of the more advanced companies are ahead of the game and sort of building up their data science teams, just like she has mentioned there with sort of Endeavour and Woolworths and some of the other bigger corporates here in Sydney as well. So, yeah, it's really busy at the moment across sort of contract and permanent hires. It's an exciting space to be recruiting in.
Brilliant. Yeah, a couple of years ago, corporates were just starting to get their head around this and start to build out the engineering components. But yeah, it sounds like people are now forging ahead well and truly past that and starting to use data for more interesting applications.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. All right. Well, welcome again, everyone. Let's start with the first question that we're going to attack as a group today. What are you seeing as the potential of data and its related disciplines to evolve the retail and FMCG sector? And what are the resulting opportunities for data professionals? Miguel, I might throw this one to you first. What do you think?
Well, whether you want to or not, Amazon is coming. So retail already changed. If you haven't noticed, it's too late. So that's kind of how retailers are seeing the moment. But I think from an initial moment of scare, they moved to a moment of understanding where they actually realized what made Amazon interesting. And then the following moment was, wait a minute, we also have data. We can also use it in all these different ways. So that's actually an opportunity. At this point, I would say the retailers that we're dealing with clearly see data as an opportunity. And especially given the year that we went through, which was absolutely exceptional in terms of appliances for electronic goods and pretty much all the stuff that JB sells and Bingley and so on. So everyone bought a new TV, everyone bought a fridge, so it was absolutely crazy. And the challenges were, you had to do it online. And a lot of the retailers were just not ready, and they had to get ready and get it done very, very quickly. And it was surprising that they pull it off. Even the small local retailers scattered around Australia, Buy Right, better appliances and so on. So all these chains and these franchises, they managed to adapt very quickly to it. And that was a big surprise. And also, I think one of the biggest challenges we had was stock, making sure that we could get the stock to the stores. Because to be honest, no one was selling anything. People were just buying from you, right? So you need to make sure that you can deliver the products that people just came to buy or that bought from you online. So
how do you do that? That sounds like one of the most challenging things. And we've in a classroom setting, we try and explain to students the importance of linking inventory with price, with demand. But how did everyone do that during the pandemic? How did retailers try to match or how did they try to predict the demand for a TV or TVs or whatever category it was with the inventory available?
Well, what they realized is it was too late. By the time they realized they needed to predict it, it was too late. All they did was try and get as much stock from the suppliers as possible, and the suppliers tried to get as much stock in the boats and bring them here as possible. So it didn't, all the stock they could get their hands on was basically sold. So they didn't have to predict the sales. Just, if you have it, I'll buy it. That's it, right? Now, the challenge is what happens next year, or what happens this year, right? Because last year was completely out of pattern, out of trend. So what happens this year? Will people stop buying because they already bought the TV last year? Or are they going to keep buying other appliances or other electronic goods? So that is, now I think they need forecasting much more than they needed last year. The challenge last year was how to coordinate all the logistics, how to get trucks to actually be able to load all the products from the right place and deliver them on time to people. That was probably the biggest challenge. It's still ongoing work, but a lot has been done. And I think if you have purchased online recently, you'd probably be surprised. I think, and again, we keep talking about Amazon and how amazing their logistics are, but Amazon isn't as adapted to Australia as the actual retailers we've been here for a long time. So I think most people haven't realized that if you buy something from, for instance, JB Hi-Fi, it doesn't get delivered from a center far away. It may actually be delivered from the store next to you. And this is pretty complex to organize, but it also means that you can actually get your product on the same day. It may happen, and it's happened to us, that we order something and 4 hours later, it's at our door because it didn't have to come from somewhere far away. So their systems evolved to a point where they could actually coordinate to do this. Now, there are still big challenges. There's still many trucks floating around half empty. And there's still peaks of demand, which it's just almost impossible to fulfill. So there's still a bit of challenges going on. And again, for the next year, for the future, because hopefully COVID will kind of fade away, the challenge is, so what is the new normal? Because now people have bought online. Will they go back to the stores? How many items will we need to have in stock from now on? Where should we have those stocks? Because maybe it makes sense to have those distribution centers and so on. So data has become crucial to the way business is done post-COVID. And one of the major projects, so as I told you, so we've managed to basically launch MarketView in the middle of the pandemic, because we've been developing it for years. And we just said, like, if there was a moment where we needed something like this, it's right now. And so we just put it out and basically finished while it was already in the market. So what NARTA, the board of NARTA, so basically all these retailers, what they decided was on the strategy going forward, which is, okay, so we have a solution that allows us to understand what's going on, what went right and what went wrong in the market. Now we need to understand the impact of advertising, and now we need to understand how many items we should actually have in stock for the future, right? So forecasting, predictive analytics became the focus of what we're developing now to launch probably in 6 months or 1 year. So that is the focus of the next level of what we need to solve. So it's I would say 80% about forecasting. And the challenge we're finding is there's no historical data for something like we went through last year. So we actually don't know what happens next. I mean, the models will spit out a result, as you know, but it doesn't mean we can actually trust it. So it's pretty interesting, but also challenging in that sense. But yeah, the focus now is forecast and applying that to logistics. So to make sure we have enough stock and also not too much stock, but the right amount of stock in the right place.
Yeah, distribution, hey? So like the right distribution of stock across a network.
Yeah, and as just to finish, as you've seen, I've been talking about retail, and 99% of what I said is actually a data problem. So retail is evolving more and more to become management of information. Yep, absolutely. It's great to hear you say that. Yeah, maybe, Xi, do you want to give us the Endeavour drinks perspective as well? Like, you guys would have seen some
really interesting, or the business would have seen some interesting times during the pandemic. What's the view over there at Endeavour, and the thinking about the opportunities with data?
So we always know we have a lot of opportunity of data, and we'll keep exploring as well. One of the top strategy that we have for data science as well as the whole organization is about personalization. So that's as a customer, because the purpose or the value of EDG, for example, Dan Murphy or BWS, is really serve customer. So for us, there are many ways to serve customer, and the data science being one of them. Personalization is one of the things we invest very heavily. That can be what personalization means to customer is really know customer even more than they know themselves, provide a service before they realize they need it and they like it. And then personalization, we look at it from different angles. For example, email, campaign, personalized website, app, product list, search result. So you name it, all different angle. That's why we need a huge data science team to get them implemented. So that's about personalization. And on the other side, we also look install as well. Install also is primarily to help the team install to serve customer as well. And by the way we do that, I think similarly we try to anticipate when the stock will be gone. So we never we try reduce the chances that there some customer coming and there's nothing available for him. So we try our best using data science to really serve customer well, bring the thing to them at a very convenient land before they know they want it. So I think for us, all the opportunity about the personalization is truly the focus and brings the business outcome at an individual level, because serving well for each individual is really bring our business outcome. So what we have done, try several things to make it happen in terms of personalization and better serve customers. One is link all the disconnected data together, so we have a true understanding of all the customers. Without understanding them, it's hard to claim we truly understand and can personalize all the offers and services we're going to provide. And the second one is having the full capacity in terms of data platform. So that's where we're making sure all the services we provide for the organization actually stable and scalable enough so we can serve customer. Then the next one is more relevant to data science, is we have to make sure we have the right tech stack platform, for example, feature store, the machine learning platform, and the cloud mix, so we can actually enable all those things. And then one of the very important thing is have the business strategy that this is one of the high priority of the whole company. That's what we're going to do. So one of the important thing for data science to really flourish is make sure we're really aligned with the business strategy. So it's not something we do something cool. It's always we're one of the elements that help the business and customer to be more successful. I would say that's something I think I've learned in the past several months and help organization to grow our data science capability. So I think within 4 to 5 months, we already have 6 data scientists, machine learning engineer, and 4 consultants build all those interesting personalization use cases. It has been a fun journey.
Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, it's all about the customer experience at the end of the day, and you've got a great opportunity there to unify data across multiple businesses, get a single point of view of a customer, and maximize their experience. And yeah, I love the order in which you presented those as well. I mean, there's a few of us here today that have got experience in transformation, and the actual business strategy is so important for transformation. So once you've got that capability and capacity built, and you've got the engineering done, and you've got the data in the right places, then that's pretty big right there. But then you can actually deploy this business unit to achieve strategic objectives. It's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the very important elements is in terms of data science is really enable leadership and organization to think of the element that they haven't think about before. So as a thought partner, rather than you understand what leadership think about in terms of strategy and implement it, is actually the proactive way. Think about what you can offer and then make a recommendation how the strategy should be shaped or reshaped. I think that would be where the data science can really help organization to grow.
Absolutely, and that's if anyone, we've got about 100 people attending this webinar right now, and I remember what it was like having events with 100 people in a room. It's a great vibe and lots of fun. But if for everyone here that is a data professional, what G's talking about there, in my view, is probably the most exciting thing for the data profession. Data professionals are now informing leadership about the environment around the business, the internal environment within the business. So they're basically feeding, as G described, the data team is feeding leadership with insight, information, and then that results in decision making. So that's such an exciting place to be in an organization, and it's only going to get more important.
Can I just quickly add something to that?
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed from probably the first time I presented to the world would have been 4 years ago. So I had one of the people who sits on the board is actually a very funny guy. And he came to me and said, I didn't understand a word you said, but we need to go in that direction. And the same person quite recently came to me and said, oh, you know, we have to do this. We have to build this forecasting solution for our stores. And the change was drastic. And basically what she was saying is, it's great to be in data that, you know, you find out things before they do. But I'm actually quite amazed by the fact that now they actually know what data can do for them, and they can come to us and ask us to go and find specific things, which I think is even more amazing, that we're reaching that time. So the connection between data and the business is becoming stronger, and this is really good.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, a few years ago, the conversation between executives and data professionals was really quite unsophisticated and clunky. Management didn't know what to ask for. The data, like PhD boffins out of university, didn't really know what to deliver, and couldn't ask questions of the executive to elicit a brief. But now it's good to hear things are changing. It's good. What's it like? I wonder. I wonder in the for smaller businesses. We've got a question from the audience. We've got a couple of questions that I think we can probably answer now. How does it affect small business retailers? So it's all very well and good if you're NARTA, or if you've got a large conglomerate like you do, G. But what if you don't? What if you're only one? What if you're only one business? How can you compete with data strategy?
I would say if it is a small business, it becomes even more important because you have less resource, not necessarily less data. You have less resource. So being really smart how you use data and win the competitive advance is really important for a small organization. I would say quite many of data scientists, they can be full stack data scientists, and having them in the team is truly changing how they can keep the competitive or to win a bigger share of the market. I would say the smaller one is even more important for them. I wouldn't differentiate that much, in terms of a data strategy between small and a larger one. They all very important, but I think the larger organization have different alternative choices on top of data, where for smaller companies, the invest in data and having data-led decision-making would be a cheaper investment compared to the heavy lifting other investment in other categories, I would say.
Yeah, thanks, G. What do you think, Fabio? Is the like some of your clients might be on the maybe not small businesses, but maybe smaller companies as opposed to a group. What would you say?
Yeah, I would actually bring the example in another way, which is maybe more from a FMCG perspective. You want to serve all channels, and some channels will be your modern trade, so your big players, but of course also the traditional trade, which are the small stores, are important. And what I've seen happening is that some of those small stores that maybe do not have all the skills or all the power to actually use the data have opened up to have a conversation with the FMCGs and listen to their suggestion on how to improve the sales in their stores. And that can be different placement, maybe changing prices, maybe having a different assortment, using specific assets. And that have had an impact because the retailer had an increase in sales, which of course translated in an increase in sales for the FMCGs as well. So, and that is coming, I think, from the understanding that some insights coming from data would be applicable and would provide real life results. And a small player that maybe didn't do this analysis on their own were actually open to discuss this and have this conversation with FMCGs that would come with these suggestions. And after testing those suggestions, they saw the results in their bottom line at the end. And I think in Australia, we do have quite a big number in some categories of FMC, of small players, but in other parts of the world, for example, Latin America, it's 80-90% of the stores are small stores. And that is where I actually saw this at the most impact. You are on mute.
Thanks, Fabio. Yeah, I'm really interested to get into the idea of craft breweries, micro production businesses, because I think it's a really interesting space for Australia at the moment. But there's this explosion I saw when I was working with the Liang group in craft brewing, and you can see it. You can see it happening at the moment. That sort of ultimately ends up creating acquisition opportunities for large groups like Endeavour and Liang and other folks. But you've got this interesting dynamic that sort of Miguel touched on before, this blend of collaboration and competition where data can be shared, information can be shared, and different ways of innovation can be created. So it's a really interesting time. Yeah. But we better keep moving on to the next.
Let me just share a couple of notes on this. So if you're in retail and you're small, you're probably focusing on a niche, and that means your focus needs to be to use data in addressing your customers, which you may even know personally, and use that knowledge to differentiate how you relate to them. So while a big corporation may be talking to a crowd, if you're in a small business, you're talking to a person, and you have to make it as they feel that you're talking to them directly. So that's how you differentiate from a larger corporation. And I guess now with Facebook and all these solutions where you can communicate directly one-to-one with your customers, that's probably the kind of data that you're going to be focusing on. Because even if you're selling the same as everyone else, but you chose a location, this is your store, then the niche for you is that location, that specific area. In that area, you have to be the best option for your customers. And knowing them closely and using data to manage that knowledge and that relationship and communication is probably where your focus should be, more than probably the global trends, which you won't be able to affect or affect you.
Yeah, they're two different ways of attacking the same problem, aren't they? I mean, you can use big data and AI and these tools to achieve personalization of the customer experience, or you could just know them.
Yeah.
Just know people. So, all right. So can anyone think of really good examples of right now how data, predictive analytics, AI, machine learning are already improving and driving success here? How are we customizing how are you guys customizing the consumer experience right now?
So let me bring you an example of a couple of big transformation that I did personally, and of course with my colleagues around the world, that I believe really encompass the use of data and new models to drive business results. From an FMCG perspective, I think there is a key need to differentiate and to unlock sustainable, profitable growth. The way to do that is on one side, hyper-personalization and be more relevant, but on the other side is also avoid wasting money where it doesn't count. And one example of this was actually on the whole value chain, use different algorithms to, first of all, classify your customer, which in this case are the store from an FMCG perspective, depending on their micro market, and have a differentiated value proposition, which means different assortment with the right price and with the right stimulus, where every single money that you spent would drive an incremental benefit. And on the same side, open a collaboration with the big chains and the big retailers to basically create a win-win scenario. Because one of the main challenges that, especially in modern trade, exists is that most of the trade spend or trade terms are actually ineffective, because you have a lot of players that are on the same space, throwing discounts, destroying perceived value of that category, not actually increasing category growth, and actually not being relevant to the consumer. So while on one side, more in the traditional trade, it was being very relevant with the right portfolio, right price, and the right promotion, on the modern trade was sharing data and create plans that were agreed between the retailer and different players in the same category to minimize cannibalization effect, and basically try to drive category growth. And when this was done, for example, in the UK, for a mass, is not a mass skincare, let's say, it's mass skincare category across 3 different players. In less than 6 months, the whole category grown 18% with the same amount of trade spent. And that was a massive win for actually for everybody, because the consumer actually got the discounts that were very relevant for them. The retailers increased their sales, which of course made them very happy. And the FMCGs, of course, growth their sales as well, and without spending more. So that was actually a massive success that then was replicated in the US.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a trend I've seen as well. Collaboration across between multiple companies in a market segment in order to achieve an improved consumer experience and a better commercial outcome as well. That's hard though, isn't it? Like, how do you innovating in a company with a new product is hard enough, but how do you, what's involved in innovating and bringing a potential competitor or a supply chain partner along for the ride?
So this was not on innovation. So first of all, innovation is actually one of the biggest trends right now with all the data to be more relevant to the consumer. This was specifically for the existing portfolio of products, kind of organize the promo calendars of multiple players so that it would minimize overlaps,
yeah,
and basically drive category growth. It was not innovation of new products.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So basically, they were using data to reduce costs and grow and drive growth, category growth, as you're saying.
Correct. And I think that is one of the main challenges, because of course here in Australia, I mean, you see that there is a lot of discounts all the time, and that kind of destroys the perceived value of a brand.
Yeah, interesting. Cool. Hey, Justin, I might ask you to contribute on this one as well. What are you seeing in terms of hiring for roles? How, because you'd see in the job descriptions of the roles that you're kind of placing, what are companies, how are companies attacking these challenges now? What are some of the ways that companies are improving their success in this sector?
Good question. So I would say machine learning is probably a big thing at the moment in terms of using that to create the predictive analytics that's required. These guys on the panel will tell you the various different tools that are currently available to help do that. And I think a lot of that depends on which cloud platform, whether that's AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. But there's a variety of tools that are being rolled out by big corporates at the moment and smaller firms as well. But I would say machine learning is probably, quite topical. And they're using that for a variety of things, whether that's maybe the supply chain, which we've kind of discussed already, the personalization of marketing, which again, we've kind of discussed already as well. There's a real range of different models that people are creating. I think most of it's fairly standard at the moment. And it's interesting to see how AI and maybe even the Internet of Things, once sort of 5G gets rolled out as well, whether that will start to have a bigger impact on things starting to develop further again.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Maddie. What can you see in the questions and the Q&A? Are there any interesting questions we should answer at this point?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, some of the panelists have been quite across it and they're sort of getting answered as we go. But Ryan did ask in the Q&A a little while ago, what can we do to help our predictive analytics in the case of black swan or unexpected events?
Yeah, good luck. Good luck with that one, panelists. Who wants to go out on a limb and do a bit of crystal ball? Tell everyone how you can build a crystal ball.
I can probably share something. I personally never came across this idea. Or think about the scenario where you would prioritize to predict the black swan events over other known business opportunities. This will be obviously very difficult. But if we do have the business requirement, if this is a high risk, you cannot get it wrong, or you definitely have to have it, then I would say there will be a lot of need to actually predict it. Or else, from my observation experience in different industry, there are a lot of low-hanging fruits to use predictive analysis for most of the organization, rather than really cutting edge, very challenging problem to solve. I probably didn't really answer this question, but I think it's probably not that as important as you would think in your actual job, day-to-day job.
Yeah, definitely. I think I saw a documentary recently about this guy that was predicting the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. He successfully predicted it, but the reason he did was because he was an epidemiologist and he'd studied pandemics all of his career. So so if you want to, maybe the way to go about this is you want to pick the particular black swan event that you are hoping to predict and then research it and look for all of the signs. But I don't know. Yeah. I think G makes a really good point. There's probably easier things to do with your life than try and predict highly unusual events. Go ahead, Mark. Oh yeah.
The challenge with the things that we cannot capture in the models, that unpredictable side, is, but could we actually capture it? When it's uncapturable, like It's like going to a casino and getting, your number to come out. Like we don't actually spend much time around it. But what the challenge is typically will be, okay, so we already capture a lot of the variance with the data that we have on the outcome that we want to track, but we don't capture all of it. But is it because it's uncapturable, like it's random, or is it because we don't have other sources of data that could actually help us complete the picture? And the focus is always trying to figure out if we're not actually missing some data that could help us be more accurate in predicting that outcome. So instead of looking for the unexpected event, which by definition is unexpected, I mean, you can prepare for it, but I wouldn't say you can plan for it. You're not supposed to plan for it, right? You're supposed to plan very effectively for what you expect to happen. The unexpected, you should prepare for it. So what if something unexpected happens, right? Like a quick example, right? Let's say you have some money and you have two options. One is you keep it in a bank just in case an unexpected event happens, or you take your money and you find the best way to invest it. Which one should you be worried about? I would say probably what is the best way to invest it, right? But eventually something will come up and you will probably need the money when you didn't expect it, but how can you prepare for this? So it's unexpected.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. What a good question, though. All right, what have we got now? We've got the biggest challenges or frustrations faced by the industry and its professionals when it comes to realizing the potential of data. So I get the sense now that folks are starting to push past the, okay, we need to get the data in the right place. We need to cleanse the data and we need to unify it. What's the next challenge that you guys are, or maybe that's still a big challenge right now, but what are some of the challenges you guys are facing at the moment in the industry? Fabio, do you want to start this one off?
Sure. So I work in consulting, right? So I think the biggest challenge that as a data practitioner I have is actually get all the people aligned on what exactly they would get out of the data scientist model and what are the next steps that are required. Let me rephrase this better. On one side, there is a complexity that some people in the business are getting it, are starting to get it, but of course is outside their area of expertise. So to get them comfortable with the idea that something that they are not really used to will be able to support them in taking better decisions, it takes a leap. And it takes a little bit of trust and bring them in a journey to really understand what's going on and what is required and how we can help them. So everything related to the change management, bringing the people in the journey is still something that requires a lot of effort. Some top executive get it, and then it gets much easier because if the CEO says, I want to do it, then it's much easier. But not all the time organizations are so forward-looking. On another side, I think there is a fundamental gap that needs to be bridged, which is the good model or the good predictor or the good outcome. It's not very useful, or actually is useless if it's not applied in the real world, it's not executed, and then it's not measured to actually learn from it and be better the second time or the third time or the fourth time. So there is this perception that the first time you will get it perfect, and it never happens. It's a learning. So you need to do something. It will not be perfect because it is not perfect. You need to execute it. And you need to get this new data that you got after you execute it because you have changed the market. And you need to bring it back and tune your suggestion and your recommendation and your model to be better the second time. And then you need to do it again and again and again. And I think this is a gap that we see, that people think that do this maybe a study once, and now they are data driven. Well, they're not. They've maybe done something that it will be effective for the next 2 months, but 6 months later, the market have changed, and that model is no longer effective.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So getting executive buy-in, but then also creating longevity in your projects as well, because mate, you might have executive buy-in, and I've seen this, the way this works. The CEO says, "Yep, I want that done. Do that now." Then okay, you do it, but then 3 months later, everyone's moved on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I think a lot of the times the board or the business tend to mistake data projects as just another IT project. So they're very used to an IT way of working, and don't fully appreciate that data projects are very different. It's not a simple, here's the scope of the project, go run with that project, and we'll expect it to be finished by this time frame, and here's your budget. It works differently to that in the real world, and I think there's a kind of a mistaken identity of what data projects actually are.
Definitely, there's still that legacy thinking, isn't there, that the data folks are the IT people in the basement and with the down there with the mushrooms, and that's not that's not the reality anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another frustration or a challenge is that there's probably not been, from a lot of businesses I work with, there's not enough investment in actually the change management side. So they'll invest heavily in the data side potentially, but they'll maybe neglect on the change management. So who's going to take that message out to the business? Because it's all very well having a team of 50 data engineers and data scientists, but they can't be fully expected to pass that message on to the business and to implement that across marketing, across supply chain, whatever division it may be. And so I think that's a challenge or an area that's often maybe forgotten about as well.
Definitely. G, what you were about to jump in before. What do you think about current challenges that you're facing?
I would say there are challenges for two sides. One is for leadership, and one is actual data science practitioners. For leadership, the challenge are two. One is align strategy with the common understanding of what success look like and sustained success. So that's one. The second one is the competing priority and resources. So it's forever hard to get everyone that you need on board. We have 10, which is already lucky, but we are kind of competing with a lot of other resources available. So I think for leadership, this is hard. And for our team, data scientists, I think what's the challenging part for them is be able to align them with the business strategy. So the problem that they are solving is try to improve business outcome, is not build a model or improve the model performance. So the mindset is try to think, as a part of the owner of the business, the goal is to achieve business outcome. All the things that you do on day-to-day job is have to be really business outcome driven rather than technique driven. So that I would say that it's not challenge. I think it's the opportunities for all the data scientists to bear in mind. The most important thing is help customer and the business to achieve what the common understand success look like.
Yeah, definitely. In the data science and AI program that we teach folks, business outcomes are like where we start. Start with what's the business objective, and then the interpersonal skills, the consulting skills training that we give people is for exactly that reason, because you've got to be able to engage, ask the right questions, present to an audience in order to achieve those objectives. Miguel, what are your thoughts?
For us, the challenge is resource allocation, basically. So we moved from, and this was strategic for us, and it actually helped to get a lot of these projects approved. So we moved from being the traditional cost center, like accounting or like all the support functions, to actually become a result center. So we have costs, but we also generate results. They may be directly from products that can be sold or by influencing the sales of other products. But whatever we do has to be translatable into the actual business. and monetized. So it has to have a dollar amount. You can have a long discussion on how it's calculated, but it's a good discussion. That means we're on track. So if you can't even figure out the impact in terms of the bottom line, you're up for problems, because sooner or later money will run out, and then it'll be too late, right? So because the challenge is allocation of resources, what are the best projects that we should track, and what is the expected outcome? So we have this, it may be upside down. So it's called testing business ideas. This is a new trend. It's pretty recent. It's not a new idea at all. It's just basically saying, use the same techniques that entrepreneurs use. Don't start a project with a lot of people. Start a project with one guy, with a bit of data, with enough of the concept. Test it out, see what comes out of it, and then move to the next phase. Just like a company, just like any startup, right? You don't start by hiring 1,000 people. You hire a few, you test the idea, you prototype it, and then the idea wins over more people and more resources, and it grows, right? So that's our approach. And basically the ideas have to compete with each other, and then automatically the best ones, the ones that seem more promising, will pop up. And this guarantees that when we ask for resources, we're not asking for resources, we're asking for a percentage to reinvest a percentage of the outcome that we expect to get. So it's a completely different approach. And that is the challenge, right? Because now we have to think like entrepreneurs. We have all these ideas. Okay, let's test them out. There's no reason why we can't spend 1 or 2 days testing out small ideas. But then when they're ready to move to the next level, they've already proven themselves. And of course, as you guys know, in data science, that's what the models do. They prove themselves, right? So we're just using that skill to apply to the business and what we do.
Yeah, that's really exciting. You're speaking my language there. That's my world. If you ever need some consulting in that space, just let me know. I'll come in. I love I love that stuff. We baked it into the curriculum as well, so that there's the students in the program start out with a dollar value. What's the business problem, but how much is it worth? So, which leads me to the next and last question for today. I want to, so now's the last chance for folks in the audience. We're about to wrap it up. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat now. Maddie, jump in if there's a burning one. But what I want to get out there is for the current students and alumni in the Institute of Data, who, especially the folks that are just about to work on their capstone projects. Have you guys got any great suggestions or ideas for a problem to work on in retail and FMCG, and maybe where folks can find some data?
I can start on that one if you want.
Cool.
Okay, so one of the most challenging issues right now, I kind of touched it before, is to understand what impact COVID had last year on the business. So it applies to any business in general. Either it brought the business down or it brought it up. So and the data source is your own data. Try to identify with your own data and eventually some available publicly available data on the impact of COVID locally where your business is. Can you isolate that impact? And the second question is, once you do that, how does that impact your business going forward? How does it change the trend? Are you supposed to have a business which is 2019 plus 2%, or you're going to have a completely different business like we had last year? So what does the future look like? And for that, using your own internal data, try to use modeling to isolate, if possible, or as much as possible, the impact of COVID. That is a challenge that we have, and I think a lot of businesses will need to address.
Cool. Thanks, Miguel. G, do you have a suggestion for folks?
Well, I think I probably would say keep sharpening the skill that you're already good at. Make sure your strength really stand out. I think the success is really from the spike you have, less on improving kind of your weakness all the time, really focusing your spike. And another one is business outcome driven. And there are many ways to be business outcomes driven. And a communication, I would say, is a huge enabler. When you advance in your career path, communication just becomes more and more important.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Fabio, what would you suggest to folks that are thinking of doing a capstone right now?
So this will be a little bit technical, and it was done in China very recently. So it's about the concept of scraping the web to identifying a point of interest with GPS coordinate. For example, for a city, let's take the city of Melbourne. You scrape all the points of interest, which are restaurants, bar, hotels, pubs, ATM, banks, hospital, train station, everything in the city of Melbourne. You would then be able to visualize that in a map, for example, in Power BI. But especially you can then use geo model that basically calculate the distance of, for example, a specific type of business, let's say pubs, with all of those POI, and try to identify correlations and causality of concentration of specific POI with those pubs. And then if you are in an industry which has sales data, and you do have sales data of your stores in a city, you can then do the same and do a regression to identify what are the key characteristics that make it more likely that an outlet is successful. And again, it's a very simple exercise in terms of data model, but it's very tangible. And it's something that actually here in Australia, some companies are doing right now. So it's very real.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, Maddie, I might quickly throw to you just to do one final check that there are no more questions to answer. Are there any burning questions from the audience to address at this point?
Well, the only one, I mean, Justin sort of addressed it, but the only one that hasn't been covered is just in regards to, it's from Bogdan, in regards to helping change the mindset, I suppose, from a more traditional approach to one that is focused on data. So he's sort of said, you know, he's seeing a lot of the traditional MBA mindset, people that have the traditional practices, reduce FTEs, etc., and forecasting with data that's not relative to the speed of processing power. And I suppose he just wants to know what tools can be used and how can you change perceptions.
What would you say, Justin?
Yeah, so my thoughts were that it takes a lot of good communication and teams that focus on their return on investment and demonstrating that to the board or to senior management. That's probably the best way to get their attention, certainly, to understand what data can do and what they can achieve with that. I'm not sure I fully understand the next part of his question in terms of the speed of processing power and what Bogdan's referring to there. So, but yeah, I would say most people focus on the communication, demonstrating the return of investment, or sadly, most people do end up moving business to find a senior management team that do value data and do get what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think more and more we're seeing this, and this is really sort of apparent from today's chat, that more and more executives are starting to get it now and understand the capability and the opportunity that data and data professionals have to drive growth in the business. So yeah, guys, thanks very much for joining us on this panel today. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, G, Miguel, Justin, Maddie, for pulling it all together. It's been really interesting. I think we've got some really great perspectives into the retail and FMCG industry. I think it's pretty clear that you don't want to. The advice today is don't try predicting black swan events. Try and maximize executive engagement. Try to align the business strategy with the work that you're doing as a data professional and that your team is doing. Really look for opportunities to collaborate internally, but also externally as well with other companies. And it seems like customer experience, personalization, and supply chain efficiencies and distribution efficiencies are the real clear focal points for the conversation. But yeah, guys, thanks very much for a really awesome panel discussion.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you for
Thank you
organizing.
so much.
See you guys soon. Thanks again.